Hello all, this is Heidi Gluck with Key Advisors. I've got Casey Shire here on the line also. He'll be leading your presentation today. We'll just give one more minute for everybody to show up and then we'll get started. Reminder that if you have questions throughout the presentation, please just type them into your question box in your GoToWebinar panel and I will be able to relay them to Casey.
Great, thanks Heidi. And we'll just give them another minute here and see if anybody else joins and we'll get going. All right, sounds good. Just so everybody knows, this call was supposed to be with myself and Mark. He's running a little behind here. He had a little bit of a family emergency he had to deal with. So I kind of got passed the torch and I'm thrilled about it and thrilled to be here with you guys this afternoon. So that being said, good afternoon. I'm Casey Shire with Key Advisors. Looking forward to spending the next 30 minutes with you guys. Honestly, I want to make this as interactive as possible, so please feel free to send Heidi any questions as we go. I will stop at each slide for you guys to ask any questions you may have. And we're certainly always available via phone and email as well. And our phone numbers are and email addresses will be here at the end of the slide presentation. So that being said, the point of today's call is the absorption habits in a service department and some of the things that we can do as a service department to increase our absorption. As everybody knows, the market is doing very well today, but we're expecting a downturn in the near future. And now is more important than ever to really focus on our fixed operations, our parts and service business, to carry us through any kind of recession or downturn we may see in vehicle sales. But more importantly, it's vital at any time of the week, month, or year to have that fixed absorption so that we can increase our market share and not necessarily be hostage with pricing on vehicles. So anyway, to get right into it here, the absorption habits in a service department, we're going to discuss really two main areas, which are basically our habits that we do on a daily basis and what we are doing or we're not doing. We're going to discuss some of the metrics that go along with that and the overall impact to the dealership. So when we talk about habits, specifically the hours and rate management, also we sell and service is time, is the technician's time keeping that tech in his bay or her bay touching a vehicle, and at what rate that we sold that time for. We're going to talk about some customer communication habits. Are we keeping the job live? Are we communicating throughout the process? Or are we, waiting to the end and being reactive instead of proactive? And we'll discuss some workflows. In the metric side of it, we're going to discuss what the key metrics are from a hour and rate perspective, proficiency, productivity, and efficiency. We're going to discuss cycle time and what that means to the dealership, what that means to the customer. We're going to talk about effective labor rate and gross profit, and then just the overall impact of this presentation. So first, we're going to talk about the hours and rates. everything that we do in a service department revolves around keeping that technician in his bay. Um, the technician's success is keeping him in the bay touching a vehicle. The customer's success is keeping him in that bay touching a vehicle. So whatever we can do to facilitate that, we're going to facilitate a higher success rate in my service department. So that involves proper technician punching time. In my travels, that is the first area of focus for us on the service side and on the parts side is that inventory integrity. And we all know that all we're selling is time, and that is our inventory. So that starts with making sure that we're recording for every hour that we're purchasing, and that we're punching in and out appropriately, and we're not moving time. It's very common to see where, dealerships are moving that available time, or we're moving stuff on indirect. And honestly, all we're doing is basically covering up what the reality is, and we cannot manage what we cannot see. So I can't tell you how important it is to have that proper punching time. Use and communication of consistent SRT times is another big topic when dealing with hours. Do we give our technicians the expectations up front? Are we setting our technicians up for success? So before we dispatch that job to our technician, does that technician know exactly what is expected of him or her in that job, how much time that job pays? Do we have the parts pre-staged? I ask the question consistently, would my technicians be more successful if I only gave them jobs that I had all the authorizations received, all the parts pre-staged, the times up front? How much more successful would a technician be? You can think of your technician as almost a surgeon. The surgeon doesn't push the patient into the OR. The surgeon doesn't set up the tooling. The surgeon doesn't do anything. He just goes in the room and he performs his surgery, and then he leaves, because all the surgeon is selling us his time. We really should think of the technicians in that light. It really is, what are we doing to facilitate? Do we have laptops? Does every tech have a laptop? Are we delivering parts to the bay? Just asking the question every day, what are we paying that technician to do that's keeping him out of the bay? So, one of the first things that we would do when we're working with our customers and clients is having the service managers looking at that available time, looking at that indirect time every day for yesterday, and asking the question, right? And increasing that awareness of time for the technician and the people that work there. And that goes along with those SRTs. As far as the rate side of the equation, we at Key Advisors recommend market-based pricing. So we want to get away from quoting labor rates. So we quote total job pricing at all costs. So it's not 2 hours at $100, Mr. Customer, for $200. It's, in order for me to complete that repair of your EGR valve, it's going to cost $200 for that to be done. Price should not be a factor when you're communicating. Price should not be a factor of whether or not the customer does business with you or not. It should be on how quickly we can deliver that vehicle back and the value that we're providing that vehicle. So market-based pricing, we base that on 3 main categories. We base that on repair, maintenance, and competitive. Obviously, the repair rate would be the highest. We're the expert. We paid for the tooling, we paid for the training, we paid for, the shop, the facilities. I would guarantee that everybody on the call here today, their service departments, if they were to do a repair order analysis today, they would see that their percentage of repairs are higher, or in probably the high 80s, 90s than your competitive and your maintenance. And that is because you guys are the experts. So we need to be charging accordingly for that. The maintenance rate, which is, you know, your brakes, your belts, your maintenance items, that should be priced at your fair market value of your area that you're in, you know. And you know, doing a market survey with your local non-dealers and dealers to see what that maintenance rate is, and that's where we set that at. And then your competitive is anything that is competitive in your area, whether it's a PM special or a clutch special, or, you know, that varies by market as well. And when you start to look at them in separate pieces, you can figure out, you can really hone in your effective labor rate based on your work mix. So how much repair, maintenance, competitive am I doing? And start to be strategic about that effective rate instead of just kind of waiting to see what it's going to come out this week, this day, this month. We start to be strategic about it. And then the fourth point on that is the felt tip review. And that is something that can be very powerful. And basically what we recommend you guys doing is, you know, once a week, you know, once every other week, you know, pull 5, 6, 7, 8 repair orders and review the repair orders. You know, look at the stories, look at the times, look where we could have, you know, did we bill out the correct amount, and so on and so forth. I worked with a dealership group a few years ago, and you know, we're consistently losing $30,000 a month, and just doing that felt tip review, we found that we were losing roughly about 0.8 hours per repair order. So just fixing the invoicing side of it, so which really starts the minute the vehicle comes in the shop, you know, and building the job and keeping the job live. But just fixing that piece, my process, my office, you know, that piece, we would have easily been able to capture an additional 0.8 hours per repair order. And if you did the math and you took that 0.8 times how many repair orders we opened for that period of time or closed for that period of time, we would have been, instead of losing $30,000, we would have been making about $25,000 to $30,000. So it was like a $60,000 swing for that specific dealership. So not only that, but we would be increasing the technician's efficiency, which was coming in the 70s to almost 85, 86%. So, you know, can we really come down on the technicians? We need to look at ourselves first before we look at our technicians and say, you guys aren't performing. You know, did we provide the structure, the processes, you know, all of that stuff that facilitates keeping that person in their bay, which is the only place they're successful. So, and I could probably talk for about 5 hours just on that piece, but any questions on that before we switch to communication? Great. And I'll give you guys an opportunity at the end to ask questions as well. The next piece is this customer communication, and this, I mean, it all goes hand in hand. There is no can have one without the other. Obviously, the most important thing is my time. Your lowest hanging fruit, I guarantee you, at your dealerships is keeping the techs in their bays. But the customer communication, number one, is keeping the repair order live, and that's moving from a reactive state. So whoever's screaming on the phone, standing in front of you, sales department, whatever, to a proactive state. So I build the repair order up front. I figure out what I need to do to get this vehicle through my shop as quick as possible. And I quote that time. I get the parts pre-staged, and then I dispatch that to the job, to the technician. And I only dispatch it when I have the authorization, when I have everything I need for that technician to be successful. And then keeping it live is, as that repair is going through my shop, I'm updating my customer throughout the repair process. I'm updating the times, I'm updating parts, and so on and so forth, so that at the end of this, I have an estimate that matches my repair order. I should be able to very easily close it and move on from there. It's definitely a different way of thinking, being doing things up front before the tech gets to the job until after. I like to say we need to slow down to speed up kind of mentality. Um, you know, a lot of technicians, a lot of advisors and service managers will look at that as, you know, I bring the vehicle in, why don't I just, you know, look at it, triage it and fix it and see what I need. But there's so much waste in that, in the finding the foreman to let him know what it needs, standing at the parts counter, getting the parts, walking to the dispatch screen, you know, whatever. That's keeping that tech out of the bay. If we can be strategic about it and only dispatch the jobs when all of those things are there, the efficiency goes up exponentially, the proficiency goes up, and your overall dwell time goes down, which is really all the customer cares about. You know, and like I said earlier, it really starts with the time that vehicle hits my parking lot. You know, who's writing the vehicle up? Are we pulling a health report on that vehicle? Do we make a determination as to what path that vehicle needs to go on at that point? Is it, and I hope we're separating by repair time, but does it need to be triaged? Do we know right off the bat that this is a quick repair? It's going to take 4 hours or less. I can get it in and out. Or do we know right off the bat that this is a long truck? This is an advanced diagnostic, advanced repair. We're going to do that one the old way. And then from there, those vehicles that go to triage, we do the same thing. Is it a 4 hour less repair? If it is, we split that and that goes to my 4 hour bays. If it's longer than 4, that goes to my advanced diagnostic, advanced repair. But the most important piece of that is that we don't dispatch our jobs to our technicians till the authorization's received, the parts are staged, and you know they have everything they need to be successful. I teach and preach servant leadership, and really what servant leadership is you take that pyramid, you turn it upside down, and your team doesn't work for you, you work for your team, and you're there for their success and their success only. Your employee's success is going to be your customer's success, which is going to be the dealer's success. It doesn't work any other way. So when you really start to focus on your team and their success, kind of everything falls into play, right? So in order for me to make my techs successful, I need to keep them in their bays touching a vehicle. In order to make my advisors successful, I need to be very strategic and swim lane their roles and responsibilities. Every shop I go to has a process, or every shop I go to is performing 100% of the process. We all have to write up trucks. We all have to, you know, do the health reports, do the OEM things that they need, dispatch it to a tech, get it fixed, get parts, communicate. We all have to do all of that. And what I'd like to say is, you know, there's you know, at any given time, your advisors, your team are all doing every piece of that at a different time. So I'll say, you know, if you had an SOP process, rip it up, throw it in the air, and whoever it lands on at that second is doing that piece of the process. But if you can really lay out a standard operating procedure and then swim lane your advisors to only do one function in that, how much more efficient will they be? You know, the same goes with the technicians. If we can separate and say, okay, these are my quick repair techs, these are my advanced diagnostic, advanced repair techs, and you know, these are my triage technicians, the whole shop, the flow, the throughput, and everything increases exponentially, which, you know, overall massively increases your absorption, which is what we're talking about here today. It also allows us to communicate that expected repair time, and it definitely allows us to not negotiate without a hostage. And what that means is, if we are playing reactive and you know, we dispatch the jobs, the tech gets it, now we have a repair order on our desk and we're looking at it a week or two later because we turbo close, unfortunately, and we go through that, and now we have to figure out what we're going to bill and how we're going to bill it and how we're going to get that money out. But if you move that process to the front and you do it all at the front and during, you know, how much more successful are you going to be? Anyway, so before I move to the next slide, does anybody have any questions? We've talked about a lot here already. Okay. So this is about the workflow. And before I get into it, I want to show you guys the 6-minute challenge. If anybody's seen Mark Martinsik or worked with us, you've probably seen this before, but it's a really powerful tool. And we'd also be very happy to share it with anybody that would like to see it. Just, send Heidi an email, or you can just comment and we can make a list of who'd like to get this or not. But I'm gonna just play with some numbers here. So if I had a labor rate of $150 and my gross profit on labor was 70%, and my gross profit on parts was 28%, we'll say, and I'm just using some generic numbers. And my parts to labor ratio was 100%, which honestly I've been seeing more than 100 here lately. Dealer I was at this week, it was 116%, which means for every dollar in labor I'm selling $1 in parts. The dealer I worked with this week was $1 to $1.16. But anyway, so what that tells me is that for every dollar in labor I sell, I make 70 cents in gross profit. And for every dollar in parts I sell, I make 28 cents in gross profit. So for every dollar in labor I sell, I do $2 in total sales, or 98 cents in gross profit. That is by far the most profitable interaction in any dealership. There's no other place that I can sell $1 and make 98 cents in gross profit, not even close. And that's kind of where that whole fixed absorption idea comes into place. If I sell a truck today, I'm lucky if I get 5, 6, 7% on it, meaning 6, 7 cents. The focus, if we focus as a dealer group on this absorption idea, and we focus on our fixed operations, and we get more of this kind of interaction, how much more successful will our dealership be? So just to carry this over, we call this the 6-minute rule because we deal with technician time in a tenth of labor. So for every 6 minutes, my technician is not in his bay touching a vehicle. It costs the dealer $15 in labor sales, $15 in parts sales, for a total of $30 for every 6 minutes. And from a gross profit standpoint, that's $14.70. It adds up pretty quick. So again, for every 6 minutes, my tech is road testing a vehicle, bringing a vehicle in, looking for a tool, looking for parts, standing at a parts counter, trying to find a laptop. I mean, the list goes on and on. Looking for his foreman. It's costing you guys $14.70 in gross profit. If I come down there and I say, what does that all mean? And I have a dealership, so I'll just do like an average size dealership at 20 technicians. Just a tenth of an hour, just 6/10 of an hour is an additional dealership profit annually of almost $100,000 overall, or $75,000 just in service alone. And I always ask the question, if my sales increased by $75,600, how much of that would go to the bottom line? And the answer is every cent of it, because you've already paid for the tax, you paid for the tooling, you paid for the training. It's 100% net profit, right? So if I increase that to a half an hour, you're a dealership net profit of almost $500,000. That's for 30 minutes per tech per day with a shop that has 20 technicians. And I can tell you from experience of going around to dealers all over this country and out of the country that the average increase, or the average time we're writing off for each tech, is about 2.8 hours overall. And that's an additional 2.7 million. So the opportunity that we leave on the table in service is exponentially, it's unbelievable, honestly. So anybody have any questions on that at this point? That's what we call the 6-minute rule. And like I said, if you guys want to see it, we'd be happy to share it with you. It's no secret. It's a great tool to review with your service managers. It's a great tool to move with your parts managers, try to build that camaraderie. Anyway, so when I get into the workflow side of this, the most important piece of workflow is that we have and we're utilizing an effective triage process. And it's an area where some people don't understand. We diagnose a vehicle, we have to diagnose a vehicle, but the meaning of triage, and I ask the question, how many times does the person that diagnoses the vehicle actually make the repair? And if that answer is 80%, 90%, then we don't have, and really if it's 50%, we don't have a effective triage process. There needs to be a hard stop after triage, after looking at the vehicle. We have no ability to pre-stage the parts, know what the SRTs are going to be, really do anything proactive if we're just bringing the vehicle in, troubleshooting it, walking up to the parts counter and doing all that kind of stuff. I can't emphasize enough how important that triage is. It is absolutely the most important piece of your process. When we talk in workflow in general, there's a ton of tools out there today to facilitate that workflow piece. Decisive is outstanding in workflows. On-command repair management we can use as a workflow. So we're workflowing the job based on whose care, control, and custody, or from an accountability standpoint, needs to be done. Again, I could go in a whole day just on how to set that up and the ways and ins and outs of that as well. But dealerships that have a process, that follow the process, that have workflows and controls in place are really, really successful. And they also have, and we've done studies on this, have had the lowest dwell time possible. And we'll talk about cycle time here in a minute, but honestly, the dealers that have that piece in place, best in class, it takes us 1.1 days to get a 24-hour or a 4-hour or less repair done. And dealers that do not have that in place, it's almost 5 days to get a 4-hour or less repair done. And we proved that looking through, I don't know, 60, 70,000 repair orders and doing an analysis on that. So anyway, the third point on that workflow is just to provide a well-organized shop with tools and equipment, and organize your shop based on, if it was up to me, I'd organize it. This is my triage section. This is my quick repair. These are my advanced diagnostic, advanced repair section. And then I'd take that advanced diagnostic, advanced repair, and I'd separate that again. And this is where I do my engine work. This is my tranny work. Paint the floors, put the tooling there. Anything you can do to facilitate keeping that tech in his bay.
Casey, we've got a question.
Yes.
If your parts to labor ratio is less than 100%, what does that indicate?
So, I mean, I have seen that in several times. I wouldn't say that it indicates anything specifically. Usually more on the other side of it, if it's more than 100%. So, for example, I was working with a dealership group this week, and it was 116%. Well, when we did that felt tip review, we found that we're leaving off almost an hour and a half per repair order. Well, if I was to capture that labor on that repair order, I would be more at it. I would be almost dead on a 1-to-1 ratio. So when I look at that, when I'm below that number, I have to look at, the national average is definitely like a 1-to-1. Now I do see it going higher parts than service here recently, but I guess it really looks at, what margins are we getting on our parts today? If our margins are in the low 20s, are we billing enough? What kind of work are we doing? If we're doing more general work where the margins have to be tighter, then you tend to have a lower parts ratio. If we're doing more proprietary work, we tend to have a higher parts ratio. It kind of falls into that category. I mean, there's really no true or right answer to that, but if I see there's one, it's big one way or the other, then I start to investigate the whys behind it. Um, you know, but hopefully I answered your question. Okay. Anyway, moving along here. So talked about the workflow piece of this. So we'll just go over the metrics real quick. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. We've already, but we measure our technicians' time in three main areas: proficiency, productivity, and efficiency. Proficiency is by far the most important piece from a dealer manager perspective. That's your inventory. Okay, we calculate that. There's two ways to calculate proficiency. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but basically you take your hours sold divided by my payroll hours, and that's really what you're capturing. Productivity is the time that the tech physically was working today and how many of those hours he spent in his bay. So I would calculate that by taking my hours worked, meaning in the bay work, divided by my attended hours, how many hours I paid for. So if my tech worked for 8 hours and he was touching a vehicle for 4, he was 50% productive. Efficiency is of the time that technician was in his bay touching a vehicle, how many hours did I bill? So I calculate that by sold divided by actual RO hours. So in that example I just gave you, if my productivity was 50% and my efficiency was 50%, my proficiency was 25%, meaning I only billed out 25% of the time that I paid for. Okay, and I can tell you the time we write off as a industry is just mind blowing. I have a dealer group that's fairly large. We write off almost 100,000 hours a year, which really is about 132 technicians that work an entire year that we don't bill 1 second of their time. To kind of elaborate on that a little bit for you, I was teaching a class at ATD, and I had 10 dealerships represented in that class for this one specific company. And the vice president of HR spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours at the first class the first day, explaining that we were 60 technicians low. We needed to have retention bonuses. We need to hire more. We need to keep our techs, and so on and so forth. And by the end of that week, the end of that service class, we had identified that just 10 of their 30 locations, we were writing off over 200,000 hours. So we had almost 100 technicians that we paid for an entire year that we didn't bill 1 second of their time. So my question to the class is, do you need to go hire 60 more guys, or you need to put the 100 that you already have to work? And I can guarantee everyone on the call here today is in somewhat of a boat where we're writing off time that we have techs that are non-revenue producing. I have not seen one that wasn't yet today. So that's kind of where the proficiency stuff comes into play. The other metric I want to talk about a little bit that goes into the whole absorption idea is the cycle time. We look at that in 3 specific terms. Cycle time is from the time my job opens to it closes. Lag time is from that last tech punch to the repair order close. From an industry standpoint, I don't really want to see anything more than 2 days lag time. But literally, you can take your lag time and take your repair order list, and the longer the lag time, the lower the gross profit on that repair order. And that's because we're selling that job to ourselves. We're negotiating without a hostage. It's our burden to figure out how we're going to invoice and collect it. So the other piece is effective labor rate. To calculate that, we just take our hours, total labor dollars divided by our hours sold, and that gives us our effective rate. We already talked about kind of the work mix and the things that go into that, but it's something that you want to be looking at every day for yesterday and asking the questions. Far too many times I see where our service advisors are trying to help our techs out in increasing efficiency by, tech had 8 hours on a job. We told the customer it was going to be $400. Instead of that tech losing those 8 hours, we just go into the system and we do a CSA. We just change that sale amount to 400 and sell the 8 hours. Well, now I just made my technician 100% efficient, but I just destroyed my effective labor rate. And we want to see reality. So it's just something to be aware of. It's something to be looking at every day for yesterday. The other piece is gross profit. And honestly, if your proficiency is good and we're keeping our techs working and we're managing our rate, the gross profit takes care of itself. Absolutely. I wouldn't want to, we strive for anything over 75% as an overall gross profit. But, when you're in the 110% proficiency range, you're doing really, really well. So, I mean, this all kind of, just to tie it up together, it's keeping the right tech on the right truck at the right time in the right bay at the right price. And I mean, we talked about a whole lot here today, but it really comes down to just time management, managing your inventory and managing your rate and making that your focus. And if that's your focus, your absorption is going to be outstanding, without a doubt. But I, circle back to that whole servant leadership mentality. Focus on your team's success. Their success is the customer's success, which is the company's success, and it all kind of rolls into one. So I'm going to open this up to questions at this point. Went over a little bit, but anybody have any questions?
I have no questions coming in, Casey.
Awesome. So that being said, I thank you all very much for today and for your participation. And feel free to email me or send an email or let Heidi know, and we'll be happy to share that 6-minute rule with you. And we'll be happy to assist you guys any way we can possibly assist you. So thanks again for your time, everybody. Have a great day.